Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? If you are a tabletop role-playing gamer, you probably know what metacurrency is. And if you're not, don't click away yet because you might find this interesting. So for quite some time, my friends and I have been playing a game of Call of Cthulhu online. And we got to this point where one of the players in this imagined situation, not the players, but one of the other characters, a non-player character, is at death's door. And one of the player characters, well, they tried to save them. They couldn't do CPR well enough. The person isn't quite dead yet, but they're still at death's door. After the game, this player was lamenting that we weren't playing a newer version of the game where they have actually added a currency, a metacurrency, where you can re-roll. I think it might be a luck or something like that. So he would be able to save this person. Now, on the side here, he didn't lament when my character was at death's door. He didn't lament that he couldn't save me that way. So, this video is not about that. It's not about resentment. It's okay, Brian. Anyhow, that became a fascinating discussion among us as we talked about the use of metacurrency in different games and how it made us feel and how it made the experience feel. And in this video, we're going to tackle tough questions like, is metacurrency a mechanic or is it a worldview? Or is the point of play creation or discovery? Now, if you don't know, in role-playing games, generally you play the part of a character in an imagined situation. They're actually an imaginary character. And as the situation unfolds, as you're doing stuff, you will say, I do this thing. And very often, you don't have to do anything, roll dice or anything. You just walk over there. If you say, I'm going to walk over there. Other times, you say, well, I'm going to try to, bust through this door. Well, now, you might need to roll dice because the outcome is uncertain. Can you do that or not? And sometimes you succeed and sometimes you fail. However, some games have a metacurrency which allows you to spend a point. And this is a point, generally you only have so many of these. And you can influence the outcome. You can either buy the outcome outright. If you fail with a dice, you can then buy the outcome or re-roll. You can even put it in the beginning and say, well, I'm going to make this much more likely for this to happen. But you're spending this currency in addition to or instead of rolling the dice. So essentially you're buying your way into success or into a certain thing happening. Now, my friends and I have different tolerance, if you will, for metacurrencies. And as we talked, and we talked about our biases and our preferences and the reasons that we play, it became really obvious why we have those different outlooks on metacurrency. For me, I have discovered after 40-something years of role-playing that my preference is to inhabit the character as if I was the character and as if the imagined situation was real. So I want to have as close an experience as being a human being in that situation without any other conceits or things to worry about. To use an overused term, I want to be immersed in character and immersed in the situation. However, there's various things that we're doing in the game. We're looking at rules and we're interfacing with dice and we're talking to each other out of character as players. And so what happens is I have to deal with certain things that are going to break that immersion or are less likely to break that immersion. And for me, dice really don't break the immersion because it's a representation of an attempt. And the outcome is uncertain, and I find out what happens as a result of these dice. And then there may or may not be consequences. But the dice are completely out of my control, just as if I'm attempting to do something in real life, and I either succeed or I screw up, and it doesn't work out so well. When I pick up the dice, I'm interfacing with the rules, but the only thing I'm really choosing to do is to try to do the thing, like break through the door. However, once I pick up a metacurrency and determine do I use this or not, then I am making a decision outside of the experience of the character. It could be a strategic decision. We really need to get through this door. Or it could be something in terms of moving the story forward. Like, well, if we don't get through the door, then I'm not sure if anything else is going to happen. And the interruption at this point, it's not external table talk, it's an internal interruption into the immersion because I'm mulling about, geez, what do I do with this? This is a resource, it's a valuable resource, and do I want that outcome badly enough? Or does that outcome matter to me enough that I'm willing to use this? And if I don't use this, then what will the consequences of that be? The bottom line for me is dice let me stay in character, but metacurrency forces me to be the player. Looking at it a different way, dice are an uncertainty embodied. But metacurrency, well, that equals control. And while some of us may love that, other people like me, well, it doesn't really do it for us at all because it breaks the feeling that we're there for. And for me, I'm there to have the experience of the character in that situation. And so when I stop and I pick up a metacurrency, then all of a sudden I am editing the story. Now, there are times when spending those metacurrencies are a lot less disruptive for me, and it all comes down to framing. What are we considering these metacurrencies representing? The game Alien has a stress mechanic with extra stress dice being given to you, which make you more likely to succeed, but also more likely to flip out. And that's very evocative of the feeling in the movie Alien and Aliens. In Fantasy Flight Star Wars, they have these force points that we can use, and it's very evocative of the force being with you or against you in any given situation. And then there's games that try to emulate the genre of pulp heroics. So games powered by Ubiquity like All for One Regime Diabolique or Hollow Earth Expedition or Leagues of Adventure, they use style points. And this really represents the people pushing themselves over and above their normal abilities because this is so important. But it also emulates the over-the-top pulp heroics that these characters do in the stories that we read. If I'm able to grab onto some excuse or way to frame the use of the metacurrency like that, that reinforces the genre and the tropes, then it doesn't bother me so much because it's part of the way that the imagined situation is supposed to look. However, if there's more of a disconnect and it's a lot more mechanical and there's no real reason that that's there other than to say, push success. Like if we're playing Call of Cthulhu, it's a horror game and it's supposed to be kind of hopeless. So when I can save, say Ivan's character by using luck, some kind of luck point, it doesn't feel authentic for that genre. Now, this does not mean that the way I like to play is good and the way that other people like to play with metacurrency is bad. It just means we have different viewpoints or different intentions for the play experience. You could kind of look at it as a spectrum of immersion in character play and narrative play. Am I the character experiencing the world, or are we co-creating a story? Am I playing from a place of character agency, or am I playing from a place of authorial agency? And both of these approaches are valid, but they produce wildly different experiences. And very often we have no clue what experience the other people want. And so when we start to get into arguments about things like this, well, the other person just sounds completely crazy. So is metacurrency a mechanic or a worldview? Yes. And is the point of play discovery or authorship? Well, yes, it depends on what you want in the first place. And you may find that certain games do it better for you than others. That's one of the reasons it's really important to talk about the game that you're going to play with your friends before you play it. Find out if it's something that you're going to enjoy based upon how the game works, or if it's going to be something that might not work for you. But I would encourage you to try different types of games to see if it works for you or not. Don't have that contempt before you actually experience it. In real life, would I like metacurrency? That's very, very tempting to be able to undo things that you've done or maybe do things that you didn't do. But I would think about it, like, if I didn't marry my first wife, which I probably would not if I had a do-over with a style point, well, then I wouldn't have my children. I wouldn't have my grandchildren. There are other things that, I still kind of wish that I had a metacurrency and have a do-over. But we don't get that luxury. This is real life. And for me, that's how I like to play my character, as if it was real life. For other people, they want some more control over the story and over the narrative and, putting the chances in their favor. And that's fine, too. It's a completely different experience. And the hobby is big enough for both of us, just like the world is big enough for all kinds of people. So if you don't like what somebody else is doing, well, just mind yourself. Just go someplace else. Don't participate with them. Don't tell them they can't do it. That's immature. And that goes for all of life. I would love to hear your comments on this, what your experiences have been. If you've never played role-playing games, what do you think about all this? And as always, if you want to support the channel, there's various ways you can do that, liking, subscribing, using the super thanks, all that sort of stuff. And thanks a lot for watching. I'll talk to you later.